Hey everybody, welcome to the Tech Founder Show. Happy Tech Tuesday. It's Tony Zayas here, joined by Andy Halko. On this show, we talk to tech founders who are really doing some incredible things that are changing the way we work and live. And before we dive in to talk about our today's guest, Andy, how you doing?
I'm good. I was gone for a week, Tony. I barely remember anything that we've ever talked about, so you're going to have to get me wading back into the pool here today.
Yeah, you were disconnected and off the grid for a week. So what did that feel like?
Oh, pretty good. Yellowstone, baby. Lots of bears and bison and all kinds of fun stuff. But I am excited to get back, and I'm excited about today's show. I think we've got another fantastic guest and a really cool conversation. So
with that, today's guest is David Pollack. He's the founder or co-founder, I believe, of ALOA, and it's a platform for outsourcing software development for startups. And so he's doing some really cool things. Let me bring him in here. Hey, David, how you doing?
Doing well. Good to see you, Tony. Andy, nice to see you as well.
Yeah, very cool. So just to get started, tell us a little bit about ALOA, what you guys are all about, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, so ALOA is a platform for outsourcing software development for startups. We got into this space, so it's myself and 4 other co-founders. We actually started ALOA while we were in college. We were building out apps, kind of doing student tech consulting ourselves, and we were looking to expand our dev team, and it was just a nightmare. We couldn't afford US devs because we were in college. We didn't have any income, and we started looking overseas. And as we were looking overseas, all we heard was horror story after horror story. And being a team of 3 of us are technical, we were having troubles outsourcing ourselves. And so that's when kind of the light bulb popped off and said, why is it at that time, 2018, and the most remote industry out there is the one that we have the hardest time working with in a remote setting? That really makes sense to us. And so our high-level mission is to create a world where anyone can innovate freely, and we saw software as a massive barrier to innovation, especially for non-technicals, those who don't have venture funding. And so that's really where ALOA came from. Was born out of that pain point, that problem of accessing cost-efficient and predictable software development.
It's really cool.
You talked about the why there. What's the how? So
yeah,
how does the platform help?
Yeah, absolutely. So we approach the space a little differently, really focused on a problem-oriented perspective rather than the solution-oriented perspective. So we have a 3-pronged process. The first is our partner network, the second is our platform, and the third is the strategist. Partner network, first problem, how do you know who to trust? How do you know who to vet out there? There's hundreds and thousands of firms and millions of developers. And especially if you aren't technical, when you interview a developer, you're commonly putting way too much weight on variables that aren't necessarily the ones you should be qualifying a candidate on. So we've vetted through thousands of firms around the world. We have qualified only 11 firms so far to be within our network. We work with firms and not freelancers overseas because we found that firms tend to be more relationship focused, and we're a very relationship focused company. It also gives our clients a little bit more flexibility to scale up, scale down their team, and reduce kind of that onboarding pain point. So that's the partner network. We pair up our clients with one of our partners depending on who best fits the profile that they need. Second piece of the puzzle is the platform. We used every project management tool out there. Most outsourced relationships are either managed in something like Jira or a chat thread. The problem with the former is that Jira is horribly complex, and if it's great for dev to dev, but when you aren't technical, it really doesn't help provide greater transparency. It commonly just makes people more overwhelmed. And the issue with the latter being the chat thread, just horribly unorganized. It's way too easy to get things lost. So we picked apart pieces of every different platform out there, put together our own management tool that's really focused on transparency, accountability, makes it super easy so you don't even have to be technical to manage your dev team. Everything's in layman's terms and super easy to navigate, as well as our payment platforms. You don't have to deal with foreign transaction fees or exchange rates. We handle that on our side. The last piece is then the strategist. What we found was that so many of these outsourcing groups are trying to make everything automated. But the issue is that the more humanity you pull out of the equation, the higher the chance of, a not necessarily seamless experience. And so we're trying to put a little bit of that humanity back into the equation. The strategist is there to understand the client, get to know them, their business, make sure that they have someone here in the States who they can reach out to if they need any help or support. We pair them up with the right firm. And then the biggest gap of software outsourcing is that there is no global standard for development best practices. And so what that means is you could be working with a firm who has great reviews, but they're really used to developing with a certain strategy that doesn't necessarily align well for you. There's tons of technical complexities to explain why, but won't take up our time with that here. But essentially what we'll do is we'll build out custom strategies for each client. And then every other week, an internal ALOA tech lead will do an audit on the firm to make sure that we are adhering to the client strategies so we can be preventative rather than reactive.
That's really awesome. I think it's interesting, this strategy for you guys, because as I've seen the trend over years, is a lot of software platforms and companies tried to go towards automation and, like you said, pulling the human element out of it. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you've really embraced the idea of, okay, to be successful, you need to be a hybrid. You need to have service and platform, together integrated for folks to be successful. Is that kind of the thinking behind your approach?
100%. Yeah. So we definitely have a ton of stuff automated, and it being a business owner, it's a smart decision to try and automate as much as you can. But there kind of comes that threshold, that point of inflection where the automation is now actually serving as a detriment because it's now pulling out those components that only a human could, really fulfill, such as pairing you up with the right partner firm. It takes someone to first understand you as a business, what your development environments are that you're looking for, and then look to our partner firms and make sure we do that proper pairing so you're working with the right people. So there's definitely a lot of automation in the process, but there's really critical components that really just do require a personal touch. And it's important to us that just because you're a startup, just because you're not technical, just because you don't have funding, that shouldn't mean that you don't get that white glove type experience of a successful and seamless software relationship.
I'm kind of curious if you've found any challenges in building out the service platform hybrid, is from whether it's building the right team or the way that you have to sell into folks, or are there other things that you've run into trying to build a business that is this hybrid of service and software?
Yeah, definitely. So the fun thing about our business is that everything is built off of pain points. And that was one way that we wanted to be different. We didn't want to just come to the market with a blanket solution. We wanted to have a reason as to why everything we were doing was in place. Everything has to be solving a specific pain point. So everything of our process is really built on the past experiences that we've had with our initial clients 3 years ago, 2 years ago. With each experience, every single week, we're always logging pain points. So we have a pain point table internally that everyone in our team is required to log. Anytime you feel any pain point, you log it on the platform. And then we review that on a weekly basis. Let's see what the pain points are, and let's see what the common underlying themes are. And based off those pain points, we then build out those solutions. So whether it be, 3 years ago, a strategist could handle maybe 3 to 5 clients max. But because of the pain points that we logged, we were able to build out a lot of automation on the platform that now allows a strategist to handle around 20 to 25 clients. Another example on the more humanity side, a pain point being we would see some client fires popping up, closer to project wrap up, and some things that we kept identifying, just saying, okay, why are these issues continuing to pop up? And that's really what influenced the audit process, which is very human oriented. Having someone who goes in every other week and does that verification to make sure that we're following proper strategy and protocol. And so that helped, mitigate that pain point of fires. So everything is intentional. And that's the thing that I personally really love and find a lot of fun, is that everything of our process is there for a reason. Nothing's just, it's not like we just built out a bunch of bells and whistles and said, you know, come use the service. Every single bell and whistle that has been built has a functional purpose behind it.
I'm curious, along the lines of addressing pain points, obviously the solution is, you know, taking away a large hurdle that people have that are non-technical. They want to develop something, they have a concept, an idea. What has been the most common challenge that you guys have been able to solve? What are some of the most common examples that you have clients coming to you that have a need, they're non-technical, but you know you've helped them get over that hurdle by pairing them up with the right team? What's the challenge that you're seeing most often?
Yeah, so the first important distinction is distinguishing between those clients who aren't technical versus clients who are technical and have a CTO and need more just, efficient dev support that we can just help them on because they know that we have the process and structure in place. So for those clients, really not facing as many of these, technical hurdles, so to speak. For the non-technical clients, the biggest one is really the first step of any software relationship. And if you aren't technical, the most important thing that you need to do is you need to learn how to write a user story. It's essentially a way for you to articulate what you're trying to build in plain English, but in a way that a developer will still understand everything that you're doing. Assumptions are the most dangerous thing to make in software, because especially overseas development, because you're not only now kind of combating just general assumptions that people have, but now you're also intermixing different cultural differences and perspectives. Mm-hmm. And if you just say, I want to build an app that does XYZ, well, that can mean something totally different to the person on the other line. So what we first do with non-technical clients is we teach them how to write a user story. So a user story is where you first identify the user type, and then you break it down. So you have modules. Within each module, there are features. Within each feature, there are actions, and every action can have sub-actions and sub-actions, et cetera, et cetera. And it's basically a way for you to really put yourself in the shoes of your user and write out in plain English every single step that can really be taken in a very clean and organized manner. That way, your mission and vision and what you're trying to build is properly articulated. Because at the end of the day, you as the business owner, you know your business and what you're trying to build better than anyone else will ever know it. It's your dream. So it's really important that we teach these non-technical clients how to articulate those dreams in a way that a developer will understand.
It's very cool.
Yeah, that seems spot on. I mean, I think that in everything, you said it was software, but assumptions. The word assumptions to me is a powerful word, because in marketing, in human resources, everything. And so I really find that intriguing, that you've looked at that from the software perspective, because that is a huge pain point I think people have had, is that their developers make assumptions, and that you've really solved that pain point.
Mm-hmm. That's the intention. That's the hope.
I'm curious to go back to the origin story a little bit. You talked about you and your co-founders in college and your pain point that started this. But what did the startup look like? What was the first 2 months up to let's start a business, and then what did the first 6 months look like of how do we do this? How do we come up with a platform and a service, and how do we find a first client? Like, what did that period look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it was pretty a giant smorgasbord of all these different avenues we were taking. So the current co-founding team we have wasn't always the team that was working on ALOA. So starting off at the very beginning of my personal college career. So I was working on a mobile app called Roomie. It was like a roommate searching app for incoming college students. Think of it like almost like a Tinder, but for roommate searching. And one of my co-founders, Christian Roroke, So we were part of the same business fraternity. We got to know each other. We were working on that together. And then that kind of fizzled out, but we enjoyed working together. We knew we would work together again one day. I kind of went and started doing my own thing, was getting sucked into more of the corporate bubble. And Christian, as well as Dawe and Brian, were working on some other apps. So they had kind of just different fun apps they were working on. One of them was more oriented in the food space. One was oriented in like social calendar type stuff, just messing around, having fun. They ended up bringing Reeson, who's the other founder, as CTO, and again, continue to just build out different apps. And through that process, as they were working on it, that's when they really stumbled upon the pain point. Now, at that point, they were 1 year out of college. 3 of them were 1 year out of college. One was 2 years out of college, and I was a senior. And it was the start of my senior year. I was talking to Christian, telling him that, the corporate lifestyle wasn't really going for me. And he said, "Hey man, you should, remember when we said we were going to work together one day? Yeah, you should join the team." So that's how I got then involved in the founding team. And at that point, it was a very different company. We did not have, we were nowhere near what we're at today in terms of kind of the strength of what we were doing. It was very manual, really kind of putting on that interface of what we wanted to be, kind of the fake it till you make it. Dawe, who's our head of sales, he was really kind of working on building out that sales process. So it was a ton of cold emails, sending out tons and tons of cold emails, jumping on a crazy amount of cold calls, most of them really not leading anywhere. But the advice that was given to us by some mentors was that in your early days as a company, your metrics for success for cold emails shouldn't necessarily be closing deals. It should be brand awareness. It should be getting your name out there. So as long as you're jumping on a call, as long as you're telling people what you do, you're getting one more person who may potentially talk about you. And so that's what the intention of that early set cold calling should be. So I would be in the cafeteria. I was always on calls. My buddies would always, make fun of me, call me out, be like, "Oh, David's on calls again." Just trying to talk with as many people as I could, sending out tons of emails. The other guys were grinding as well, working on the product, trying to build out those features as we were working through those initial clients. So those early clients, we had eyes that were, many more eyes on each relationship, so we could tackle more feedbacks. One of our first clients actually came from Lyft. Dawe was driving for Lyft and Uber, and one of his passengers came in the car, and they were talking, and he was telling her about the startup. It turns out that was one of our first clients. So it's all a pretty great story, and all just slowly came together.
That's really cool. I'd be curious, all the cold outreach that you guys were doing, who were you originally targeting? And then how has that changed over time? So who the audience is that you guys are going after?
For sure. So we originally were targeting startups, early stage startups. So we used AngelList. We would go on it. We, segmented it out, different cities as to what our primary, secondary, tertiary, et cetera, markets were. And Dawa and I would split up the cities, and we would take each city and we would go through AngelList every day, just look through the new company postings. And if you were an early stage startup that was not funded or pre-seed and 1 or 2 team members, then you were our first ideal candidate. Advice that was given to us by a mentor was it's better to build something that a few people love rather than a lot of people like. If you build something that a lot of people like, you're getting way too generic. You're not actually going to find that true product market fit. Do something that a few people love, build that product market fit, and then expand from there. So we really took that to heart, really isolated our search down to pre-seed, not funded, early stage, 1, 2 founders, that's it. And those were the companies that we would cold call and cold outreach. As we grew, we slowly tried to expand that outreach. We've tried tons of different, methods, but ultimately the main channels now for us, referrals is our biggest. So we get most of our clients through referrals, which is being on the company side, it's a fantastic sales channel, and it's, you know, every time we get a referral, it's just great validation that we are kind of helping people innovate in a successful manner. And the second channel would be through Google Ads. So we started some ad campaigns, and also through our blog. So we have a blog on our site. We post about 1 to 2 blogs a week, really just about startups and general content. So we've been able to grow it to about 12,000 or so monthly organic viewers, but always working to kind of build that and just further ourselves as an authoritative voice of the space.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, the product market fit conversation. And I you know, I bring this up with almost all of our founders that we talk about, is that it's hard to find that product market fit, because one, you don't necessarily know it, and so you have to test some things out, but you also have a big vision of what could it be and who could we speak to. And I'm sure having multiple co-founders, there's some debate and discussion around those types of things. So, you know, how did you guys have that conversation about, you know, let's find our right market fit? Or was there any logic behind it? Was there any, like, you know, methodology that you used, or how did you guys approach that thought process of let's narrow a market to find who's the right fit?
Definitely. So it's a great point. There were 3 main things that I would say kind of drove us to achieve kind of that product market fit in a more efficient manner. I mean, before I say anything, I don't even think we have perfect product market fit yet. You know, only like,
who does?
Exactly. Only the biggest companies out there can really say that they have product market fit, unless you're, you know, thousands of employees and you're really just exploding. Yeah, you found product market fit. So it's always a work in progress. I mean, I think that's, you know, the biggest thing just for any tech founder, is that you can be 5 years in and you should still always be working on product market fit. There were 3 main things, though, that I would say. The first is our mission. We made sure that we are mission focused. Take the greed out of business and things are a lot easier. We don't really care as much about making money quickly. We care more about changing the world, and we think we can change the world through creating an easier pathway to innovation for anyone. Imagine what the world could be if doctors or whoever didn't need a technical background, had a brilliant software idea, and they could just go do it. So that's the first thing, is everyone is really aligned on our mission, as every decision we make needs to get us taking one step further towards creating a world where anyone can innovate freely. Second and third are more of just kind of other, you know, startup lines that you'll commonly hear. The first is fail fast, fail frequent. It's about just doing something, getting it out there. And if you fail, awesome. You found one way that doesn't work. So now you're one step closer. And that's the beauty of being in love with the problem rather than the solution. If you're in love with the solution, if you face, you know, one roadblock, you're pretty frustrated and upset about it. Whereas if you're in love with the problem and you face a roadblock, you're pretty excited because you just found one way that doesn't solve that problem. So now you can move on to the next attempt. So fail fast, fail frequent is definitely a big one. And the other one is that if you aren't embarrassed by your MVP, then it's not an MVP. That's like my favorite line, especially, you know, being in this space and working with founders day in and day out. Everyone wants everything to be perfect. You want to get it out there. You want it to be this, you know, beautiful, immaculate thing. But at the end of the day, you need to focus on iteration. You need to get something out there in the hands of users, and users are pretty forgiving. And if you aren't embarrassed by your MVP, then it's simply not an MVP. You spent way too much time on it, and you just wasted effort that you could have been using towards gathering feedback and iterating in the proper way.
Yeah, I totally agree with those two. You know, fail fast and being embarrassed by your MVP. You know, but as you were talking, I was kind of thinking about it. Fail fast. I totally agree with the mentality, and I've used that approach. But I've also, you know, as I think about it, have seen people that fail so fast that they didn't really learn the right lesson, or, you know, they missed understanding what they were failing at, if that makes sense. Like they didn't go into it in depth. What do you think about that? Just kind of high level of, what's the right way to handle failing fast? Is it, how do you make sure that you're failing right and fast?
Yeah. It's so important to fail right. And that's like, it feels weird to say that you can fail in the right way, but
fail right.
It's so
That's
important.
my new phrase that I'm coining.
Coin it. It's yours. So if you fail and you don't take time to reflect on that failure, then it is a failure. Every failure provides you an opportunity to learn. And that's where the value comes from failure. So how do you derive value from each experience? You reflect back on it. Take notes, think back what happened, what went wrong, how did you get there, what steps did you take, where did you start feeling the pain points, what were the pain points? Start just kind of, doing that analysis as to what went down, what happened, and derive your so what. What can you do next time to avoid that? If you don't know what you can do next time to avoid that, talk to the people, talk to whoever you were interacting with, talk to other people who were involved in that failure with you. If you aren't going to take some learning out of the failure, then it's a wasted experience. Every single brilliant tech entrepreneur, or just entrepreneur generally speaking, that you talk to has some crazy failure story. Everyone has failures. That's how entrepreneurs are able to continue climbing the ladder, is because they learn from experience and they figure it out as they go along. Nobody knows everything. And once you can kind of embody the fact that nobody is truly an expert at anything, and there's always room for disruption, and there's always ways to figure out a better way to do it, or whatever it be, just be a lifelong student and study your failures and figure out what that so what is, derive some value from it.
That's the book that we're going to co-write, is if you don't fail right, it's a failure.
I'm in.
The most confusing book ever.
Lock me in.
David, to shift gears a little bit, on this show, we like to talk about, innovations that we're seeing out there. And given what you guys are doing, I'm sure you're seeing a bunch of really cool things being developed. I'd love to hear some of the things that you're seeing, some of the trends, your clients, what's going on out there.
Yeah, definitely. So, innovation is just the coolest thing. I'm obsessed with technology. It's so cool just seeing how quickly humanity is advancing and finding different ways to solve issues. We've done some pretty cool and fun projects. One project is more of like an augmented reality where I can't necessarily share everything with each client just because of the contract, but there's different augmented reality applications where you scan something and it gives you a virtual tour, as an example. Or there's other clients where during the COVID and the pandemic, they were creating a way to let cities better track where symptoms are being logged, so they could figure out how to better mobilize first responders and health support. So that was a nice altruistic advancement and endeavor to be on. One thing that ALOA is working on is ALOA Pay, and we're actually working on spinning that out as a new business, as a SaaS product. We're currently building our wait list, and we should be live with our beta in around 3 to 4 weeks. But we've been using ALOA Pay ourselves for the past 2 years or so, 2.5 years. We built it again because of pain points. It was taking us a while to collect on invoices, and everyone was using credit cards. And it really blew our mind. We looked at everything and we said, okay, let's look at invoicing as an industry. There hasn't been any innovation in B2B invoicing since email was invented. So 1978 was the most recent innovation with B2B invoicing. It's still done the same way. You fill out the invoice, you send an email to someone, it sits in their inbox. Sales team has to keep following up until they find that invoice, then they pay it, and then they pay you. And you don't know when they pay you until it actually hits your bank. So there's no transparency or control. It was a horrible process, and we thought there should be a better way. And the vision that we had was, let's take the B2C payment model and let's bring it to B2B. So, for example, Amazon, Starbucks, Chipotle, right? Like they all have their own payment application because it gives them control. You have the one-click pay, which Amazon generates. I think it's around like 2.5 bill annually from their one-click pay. They can control their fees and any additional fees they want to charge, or who takes the credit card fee. They control their data, their invoicing, their follow-ups. Everything is automated, and so that's currently we had some clients who really liked it. The funny line that we would hear a few times was that we made it way too easy for our clients to pay us. And that just kind of made us laugh, and we were like, okay, this could be something good. And we had some clients ask to use it themselves, so now we're spinning it out into its own product, where you as a business, you can now have that one-click pay for your invoices. You can have automated follow-up sequences, so you don't have to have a sales team, doing the dirty work. You can change the transaction fees. You can take it all yourself. You can put it on the client. You can split it 50-50. You can adjust it however you want. You can add a percentage if you want to try and make some revenue on that side. If your client found out about that, they probably wouldn't be happy, but you have full control. Ultimately for us, it ended up decreasing our collection times by about 70%. And it saved us over $20,000 last year on transaction fees. So it's been pretty awesome, and we're really excited about it. Really hoping to kind of disrupt that space. So that's an innovation piece that is quite fresh on my mind.
So where are you guys at with ALOA Pay?
So so it's fully built. We've been using it ourselves, but right now we're SaaSifying it. It's way too specific to our own business, so we're building it a little bit more generic, giving more kind of user functionality to set your own custom email sequence, to change your own transaction fees and manage that. To let's say you want to add automated late fees, so if they don't pay within X number of days, a late fee is automatically applied, so you don't have to be the bad guy. Or early pay incentive. If you pay early, you get a certain discount, or if you refer someone, you can apply credits. So all of that is currently underway. We're finishing up the beta, so we should have the beta done in a few weeks. And we're currently building out our wait list for those early users to be testing the platform and being our first adopters. So we're building that wait list out pretty well. We've got some pretty significant traction, which is always exciting, and hoping to close out that wait list shortly. And then we'll hit the ground running.
You're probably like us and talk to a lot of really early stage folks that have a innovative idea, or an idea in general, and want to bring it to life. What do you see as the biggest either misconception or lack of understanding of folks that have a good idea and have not yet figured out how to bring it to life?
Yeah. The biggest point I would say is when people say, well, I can't do this because I'm not a blank, fill in the gap. I'm not a marketer. I'm not a developer. I'm not a biotech, whatever it be. You don't have to be an expert in your space to innovate and disrupt. It's really cool how many different services out there are really supporting endeavors. So for example, like software, we have tons of clients who aren't technical or developers, but they can innovate efficiently with software. If you are in the nuclear energy space, start calling people, cold call, reach out to people, say that you're interested in doing something and you want to have conversations. The hardest step is truly the first one. Everyone's just afraid to take that first step and to try something because they're afraid of that failure. What if I put in all this time and then I fail? Well, if you're really passionate about the idea, and that's the key there. If you're only focused on money, that's an external motivator, and eventually it's not going to last, right? You're going to burn out. If it's an intrinsic motivation where you're truly passionate about what you're doing, well, then any failure you have is excitement, right? It's that idea that you're one step closer. And the hardest step is really that first one of just diving in. We as a founding team, right? Like, I'm not technical. I don't know how to develop, but I'm doing a tech startup in the software space. None of us have ever been in the payment space. We just felt a pain point and we were just like, this sucks. There's nothing else out in the market that can solve our pain point. So we're just going to try. And ultimately you just have to try, and eventually you just keep iterating and iterating, and eventually you'll figure it out. Maybe something sticks or maybe it doesn't. These companies and all these entrepreneurs and doing these amazing things, almost every single one is, you're only seeing the things that have been successful. Like every single person has done so many things that have not been successful. You just don't hear about it, because why would that be newsworthy to anyone? Right? You hear about the successes, but you need to just kind of bring yourself back down to earth and recognize that everyone's been in your spot. Nobody is an expert at anything. I mean, Jeff Bezos started off selling books. Look where he's at now. Right? If at the very start of his thing, if you told Jeff Bezos that he was going to be a global logistics prodigy, he was selling books. Like, come on, that's like nowhere near global logistics and everything that they're doing. So there's so much opportunity, and the world is such a cool place, and you really just gotta buckle down and kind of shed your dignity, and just go for it. Jump in the deep end and see what happens.
That's a quotable one. Shed your dignity.
Shed your dignity. You mentioned being embarrassed by your MVP, and it's funny, as we've done a lot of founder interviews, some folks spend 2 years before they launch a platform. The first thing that they launch is 2 years in. We've had others that said, I launched something in 15 days and it was vaporware. We did all the work behind the scenes, and I'm sure it's different for everybody that's got a software idea, but where do you see the point of what an MVP should look like, and where the end of that is, and when you should start putting like something real out in the world?
Yeah, so it's pretty complicated answer, because as you were saying, like, there is no right one answer. It's really dependent on your situation. So let's use a few examples. If you are a venture-backed startup who has 100 mil in funding and all the resources imaginable, yeah, take your time. You don't need to build an MVP. You have the resources and ability to build a version 1. And if you've proven market product fit and you have LOIs signed that people are saying, yes, I will use this once you build it to XYZ, as you're saying, if it's going to take you a year and a half to do it, then buckle down and grind out for a year and a half and build it. But that's because you have the resources and you have the ability to do so, because you can also pay yourself. If you're an early stage startup and you don't have a lot of money, then you want to be as scrappy as can be. And really the name of the game is just being scrappy. Start off with a low fidelity wireframe. So it's like, almost think of it as you're just drawing something on a piece of paper. Show it to people. Get feedback. Do you like this? Does this make sense? What would you want? Once that works, then get to a clickable prototype. Again, all this stuff that you can do with like no code tools. Another thing that's a beautiful advancement of technology are no code tools, which happy to chat about more. But do a prototype, right? Like, use different platforms, Envision, Bubble, etc. Build your prototype. Clickable. Let people use it. Gather feedback. Everything looks good. Feel like you're going in a great direction. Awesome. Then you go to the next step. Build out and actually develop your first draft, first iteration. Only have a handful of users, 10, 20, 30 people who you're close with, who will give direct and very diligent feedback. Build it out for them, because you know that they're not going to hold the bad design and user flow against you. Use it purely as a way, again, to build feedback. You've now done that 3 times. You've gathered that feedback 3 times. Everything is still thumbs up. We're good to go. Awesome. Now maybe it makes sense to sink a little bit more money into it and work on that next version. It's a lot about really just kind of where you are, what your resources are, what you're looking to do. The most important part, though, is really customer discovery. And that's such a critical component of any business, and something that people commonly overlook way too much. There's this great book called The Mom Test. Highly recommend it for anyone looking to do customer discovery. And it basically just talks about how in most conversations, when you do customer discovery, you're phrasing things in a leading manner. And so you're receiving biased information. And what you need to do is you need to ask questions in a way where if you were to ask your mom, you would be able to get the truth out of her, not just her trying to please you because you're her child. And so it's really cool, and it talks about like restructuring the conversation and different angles you go about it to subtly get to the answers you want without clouding their judgment with, you know, who you are and stuff. And so that's a super important, and I think that's the critical piece before diving into any MVP effort, and that will tell you, does it make sense to wait 2 years to do it, or is this something that people literally need right now?
Yeah, I hadn't heard of that book, and I love the idea of, you know, how do you get your mom to tell you the truth. And I usually run from entrepreneurs that they want mom's, you know, opinion, where they're looking and they are leading and they want that, versus folks that try not to lead or are open to harsh realities. I always think those are the folks that are going to be the most successful right off the bat. For sure.
Totally agree.
So going back a little bit, David, how do you, your co-founders, you know, you talked about how for clients that you're bringing on, they need to be able to articulate their vision and have everyone clearly understand that. How did you guys get to that point for your understanding amongst one another with multiple, you know, co-founders in there, and then taking that vision out to the world? How, you know, what did that process look like for you guys?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't something we had a grasp of right off the bat. We've learned from our own mistakes. It was about the moment that comes to my mind was it was around New Year's of 2019, I think the year was, and we were growing well, things were moving, and we started to get blinded by the money, and we started making decisions based off of money, and started just taking on more leads without doing proper diligence. And it was New Year's, it was the day before New Year's Eve, and we had like 3 client fires hit all at the same time. It was an absolute nightmare. Like we were all on vacation. None of us could actually be on vacation. Another kind of, you know, one of the drawbacks of being at a startup, that's the responsibility. You don't technically have vacation. So, you know, my family's all hanging out on the beach. Everyone's families are doing their own thing. We're all headphones in, plugging away, stressed as hell. And we go through that whole experience, and, you know, we were able to make it out and reflect back on everything. And ultimately what we realized was that we were growing quicker than we realized, and we started to stray away from money, or from our mission, and started focusing on money. And one of the points that really made that stuck out to us was actually one of our co-founders' girlfriend. She said that she never heard him use the word money so many times. Like, he never used the word money. And then in those past 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, money was a word that she continued to hear him say. And so that was like a point to us. We were like, okay, we totally got pulled away from our mission and our vision. We can't let that happen again, because we saw the consequences. And so what we now do is we do this thing called an open compass that we started. And the intention is to serve as a reminder as to what we're doing and why we're doing it. So the first company all hands of every month, so we do one weekly with the founders, and we'll do one with the full team once a month. And on that monthly all hands, we do an open compass, a reorientation session, where, you know, Christian just kind of outlines our why, our how, our what, our values, why we're doing what we're doing, how we're doing it, just reassuring everyone and keeping us grounded no matter what's going on, making sure we're all focused on why we're doing what we're doing. And then it's a time for everyone to go through one by one and just kind of get off their chest what's keeping you up at night, what's stressing you out, what's worrying you. That way we can kind of be just a very open, transparent team, know what's bothering everyone, know what our worries are regarding the business, and make sure that we kind of stay true to our mission and avoid a scenario like that again.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I like the open compass idea. And, you know, something we talk about all the time with our clients and our own businesses, keeping folks aligned towards the vision of the business, and what are the methodologies and how do you do that? And it can be hard. One, I think a lot of businesses focus the challenge of the co-founders, the leaders aren't always aligned or have a clear understanding of what the vision is. So how do you even get everybody on the same page?
Yep.
Do you guys use any methodologies to document, create, that the core values, vision, mission, and help articulate that to your team internally?
So we use Notion as our kind of like team note-taking playbook. So we have all of our playbooks in there. We have a strategist playbook. We have a partner firm playbook. We have a client playbook. We have a product playbook. And we use that as kind of our gold standard for all of our notes and everything. We use Airtable to log a lot of stuff and use that to manage a ton. That's been what we use for all of our pain point tables as well. So that's been super, super nice and a really positive impact on the company.
Yeah.
We use Slack for messaging. We use our own platform for stuff, but ultimately it's really just conversation. And it's really just continuing to have those conversations and just checking each other, do those checks and balances. We have one-on-ones each week, so we'll all have kind of like a one-on-one meeting just to make sure that we're staying on pace and doing what we need to do. But it's a time for everyone just to make sure that we're focusing on the right things. If we hear in conversation that focus is starting to be on the profit margin or on something else, that's a time for one of us to step up and say, hey, that's not where the focus should be. This is what our mission is. It's just really making sure that we all hold each other accountable.
On this show, it's been a common thread of mentorship, and you brought it up a little bit earlier. How did did you come into all of this saying like, I want to mentor, I'm open to this? How did you find folks? And then how do you use mentors day in and day out?
Yeah, it's mentors are so important. If you don't have any mentors, around you to access, just cold message people on LinkedIn. People want to help others. They want to share their knowledge. And you'd be shocked at how many people are willing to jump on a call and chat with you when you show that you're genuinely interested in learning. Mentors are so important. They help teach you so many things that you otherwise would have had to learn on your own through failures. So it helps you avoid a lot of those first-time failures. For myself, one of my first mentors was she was the director of Vanderbilt's Entrepreneur Center. And so she was someone that I would go to all the time and chat with her a bunch and get her feedback. And she was super instrumental to kind of the beginning of my journey with ALOA. As I have continued throughout my career, I've started to, look towards others as mentors, whether it be, other professionals in this space who I jump on a call with every so often and just keep them posted as to what's going on, as well as some of them just people who I've cold called and cold emailed. I just said, looked at their background. They looked awesome. It's like, hey, I'm a recent college grad looking to do blah, blah, blah. Would love 15 minutes of your time just to chat and ask questions, jump on that call. And that's truly what I use it for. I'm not trying to sell them anything. I'm not trying to sell them on my business. I don't even talk about my business. I literally just ask them questions. How did you do this? What did you do? What advice would you have? And you can find those mentors, find those people. Not everyone will continue to be a mentor. I've definitely had some relationships where it seems great, and then next thing you know, they drop off the face of the earth, and now you're their worst enemy, and you have no idea what happened. But those are kind of the things that you just gotta, let slide off and just keep moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's a great point to reiterate of what you said is just reach out to folks. I'm always amazed of how many people are willing to give their time and insight and help and expertise, and how many people that are early on are afraid to just contact someone, and it works. So
it's unbelievable. I've had conversations with C-suite level people for companies that are doing like 100 mil annually. literally just from cold call. I'll just look people up and I'll just shoot them a note on LinkedIn. Just say, hey, recent college grad, trying to get into space. I know nothing, and I really would love the opportunity to chat for 15 minutes and just learn from any advice you have. People love helping. It's actually unbelievable how many people will, not everyone responds, but how many people will respond, and the value that you can get from that.
I think that humility piece that you added in there is probably beneficial to getting people to respond.
For sure.
So David, where do you see, what is the future and the projection for ALOA? What are you guys looking to do over the next 3 to 5 years with the business?
Yeah. So with ALOA, we definitely just want to kind of continue on this course and further our mission. So we know we still have a lot of work to do. Their software is so complicated, and there are always going to be pain points here and there, and that always provides us an opportunity to further innovate. So we've got a ton of work to do. We've made great strides. We've worked with around 150 or so startups at this point. But we've got a lot of progress to make in plugging more gaps and making it more seamless and more autonomous without sacrificing that aspect of humanity. See how we can lower our margin to make it more affordable. Do whatever it takes to further that mission, to take one step closer to create a world where anyone can innovate freely. So that's kind of the 3 to 5 years is just keep growing, building out that client base, more partner firms, create a more accessible roadmap, establish ourselves as that authoritative voice of the space. And, hopefully we can also then spin out some of those complementary products. The reason that we decided to move forward with ALOA Pay was we had a conversation. Does this align with our mission? And ultimately what we determined was that if you are a small business or an agency or whatever it be, and you are owed a lot of money, the average small business is owed roughly $84,000. It's wild. Everyone's owed so much money. If you're owed money, if you're not collecting on time, that harms your liquidity, that harms your ability to innovate, because now you're cash strapped. So we found it a worthwhile endeavor. So we'll keep doing that. We'll keep thinking through and looking at our own experiences of complementary products and services that can help innovate and disrupt, but that will ultimately serve to help individuals and companies innovate freely.
That's great.
One other area, it's kind of a big question and always tough, but I think for our shows to help other founders learn and almost in a way be mentors for those folks, I think you learn the most from struggle and mistakes. So I'm curious, are there any, over the years that you've been building this business, any major challenges or major missteps that you mind sharing that you learned a lot from over this time?
Yeah. I think the big one that sticks out to my mind is really that moment in 2019 when the world felt like it was crashing. That was kind of the moment when, at least, me, I was just under a year out of college, and I was just like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this? I should have just gone corporate. And that was when I was starting to second guess everything, and a very, very difficult moment. And it's really just about holding true to yourself and your mission and what you believe in. It's not easy being an entrepreneur. It takes a personality style for sure. And it takes a certain level of grit to be able to keep working through the backlash. For me, one of the biggest things that I had to work on was just being sensitive to those criticisms and critiques and not being perfect. If a client calls me frustrated, like I get very emotionally drawn into business. And my co-founders are fantastic, as they're great at helping me work through that, of separating emotion from business and trying to just be practical. But if I have a client fire, whatever it be, I get super emotionally drawn in, and it's not only physically and mentally exhausting, but it ends up not being productive too. And so through so many of those experiences, it's helped me kind of just build thicker skin. So it's kind of going through those experiences. I also started meditating. And that's been literally has changed my life. I try to do 20 minutes twice a day, and I am genuinely a whole new person. So there's a ton of stuff. A lot of it is really just self-help and make sure that you focus on yourself. And that's something that we do really take to heart at ALOA. We have a quality of life KPI, key performance indicator, that has equal weight to all of our other tasks. And we all set our own. And if we don't hit our quality of life KPI, that has just as much weight as if I didn't hit my sales KPI, as an example. So then we have to look at my schedule, figure out how we can adjust it to make sure that I'm still taking care of myself. And I think that's the biggest thing. Like, you're going to fail, you're going to get stressed, you're going to cry, you're going to laugh. It's going to be a crazy roller coaster of a ride. But at the end of the day, we're all still human, and we only have one shot at this earth and living our lives. And nothing is so important where it's worth just ruining your life and day over. And have fun, enjoy what you do. And that's kind of, the name of the game.
Yeah, I totally agree. One of the things that I like to kind of end on, we're talking to so many tech and software founders that are, I think, really tapped into the innovations that are happening. And I don't know if you mind putting on your mystic, wrap on your head a little bit. And what do you think over the next 5 to 10 years, generally from a technology standpoint, is going to be most impactful to either the market or the world?
So, well, the thing that comes to my mind in terms of like the coolest innovation that could still be the most impactful, I think will honestly be space. The ability to travel to the moon, the ability to colonize and build economies in new territories. Right? Like it's always been a dream, and you can only sit on this earth and look out and envision what a world could be. Yet we now have people who are going out to space consistently. There's a billionaire entrepreneur out in Japan, and he's doing this this program where anyone can apply. Applications are closed. I did apply. And you can apply to go to the moon. And it's going to be 8 people that he selects to go on this civilian mission to the moon and just give the world a new perspective on what this new frontier could be. Once that becomes a little bit more common, I mean, the endless opportunity of markets and industries that are going to start opening up, I think, will be insanely cool. And I'm fascinated by space. I would love to go to the moon. So it's something that I always read up on, and I think is really fun and cool.
So I have to ask then, if you could choose one person in the world to be on the spaceship with you to go to the moon, who is the one person you would want to have on the ship?
That dude is not only like arguably the most brilliant mind of the past millennias, but he's also hysterical. So you not only learn a ton, but unbelievable entertainment.
Yeah, he could crash Bitcoin from anywhere.
Yeah, so. The dude's insane. Right. I would love to spend some time with him. That would be unbelievable.
That's awesome.
Very cool. Well, David, as we kind of wrap up the hour here, we would love for you to share with everybody watching just where can people pay attention to ALOA, ALOA Pay, everything you guys got going on.
Yeah, no, appreciate
ALOA
that.
Moon base.
Yeah, ALOA Moon. That's Andy. I'm coming to you once that comes. You're going to be our first manned mission to the moon.
I appreciate it.
Make them apply for the return trip.
Yeah. There you go. So you can check out our LinkedIn. We're always posting our blogs on LinkedIn as well. So LinkedIn for both ALOA, ALOA Pay. Our website is aloa.co or aloapay.com if you're trying to get on the ALOA Pay waitlist. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and on aloa.co. We also have our blog there and our resources tab. So we have pretty detailed books on ebooks on everything software. So how to vet developers, what is software development, how to handle bugs, everything that you should know when stepping into a software development experience.
Very cool.
That's great. Thank you so much, David, for your time today. You're doing some amazing stuff, and we will pay attention and see where you go with things. So fantastic. I really appreciate your time here today. Everybody, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, guys, so much.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, David.
Appreciate it.